I didn't make a sound. That's the part nobody believes when I tell this story. They expect me to say I stormed in, or slammed a door, or at least let out some kind of noise, a gasp, a laugh, something. But I didn't. I just sit in the hallway with a bowl of cereal going soggy in my hand, and I listen to my father explain to my brother exactly how they plan to use me. "She'll cover it," he said. "She always does." Me, 29 years old, a licensed physical therapist with a decent salary and a credit score I had spent 6 years building from nothing. And in my father's voice, I was just a resource, a line item, something to be drawn from when the balance ran low. I went back to my room. I ate the cereal. I didn't say a word. But that night, I opened my laptop and I started moving money. Before I tell you everything, I want to ask you something. Can you drop a "hey" in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from? I find that grounding somehow, knowing there are real people out there who've lived versions of this too. Because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of thing that sounds impossible until you've seen it up close in your own family. Have you ever been the one who just handles things? Not because anyone asked you to, not because you volunteered, just because somewhere along the way everyone decided that you were the one who could, and so therefore you should, and that was that? That was me. For as long as I can remember, that was me. My name doesn't matter as much as the role I played. But for the sake of this, call me someone who grew up believing that being responsible was a virtue. My parents taught me that. Or I thought they did. I'm the older of 2 kids. My brother is 4 years younger. I'll call him by what my family always called him, which was basically untouchable. He was the funny one, the charming one, the one who could flash a grin at my mother and get an extension on anything. Curfews, chores, consequences. Everything bent for him, not because he was a bad person necessarily. I want to be fair here, but because my parents made it so easy for him to never have to grow up. I, on the other hand, got the other track. When I was 15, I started babysitting to pay for my own school clothes. Not because we were poor. My dad worked in insurance. My mom did bookkeeping part-time. We were solidly middle class. But my parents had a philosophy about me specifically, which was that I was mature enough to handle it. That phrase got used a lot. You're mature enough. Translation, you're on your own for this one. My brother got a car at 17. A used one, sure. But still, my parents paid for it, insured it, and filled the tank every week. When I turned 17, I was told that if I wanted to drive, I could save up. I did. I bought a 10-year-old Honda with 40,000 miles on it, and I paid for my own insurance with money from a part-time job at a pharmacy. I remember being proud of that. I genuinely was. That's the thing about growing up in an unequal house. You normalize it. You tell yourself it's building character. You tell yourself that struggle is a gift and that your brother's easier path will probably hurt him in the long run. You tell yourself a lot of things to make the math add up. Because if you sit with the raw version for too long, it starts to feel like something you can't fix. So I didn't sit with it. I just kept going. College, I paid for myself. Loans, scholarships, a work-study job in the campus library. My brother's tuition, covered. My parents took out a Parent Plus loan they said they'd handle. I found out years later they never paid it off. But that comes later. After graduation, I moved to a different city. Got a job at an outpatient rehab clinic. Worked hard. Got promoted. Opened a high-yield savings account and started putting away $600 a month because no one had ever taught me to save and I was determined to figure it out myself. I was proud of my life. Really, genuinely proud. And I kept a relationship with my family. Sunday calls, holidays home, the occasional visit. Because they were still my family, you know. And I wanted to believe that the uneven treatment was just a generational thing. A personality mismatch. Something that didn't have to define us forever. I was 31 when I finally understood what I actually was to them. It started with my brother's business. He'd been trying to launch some kind of dropshipping operation for about 2 years by that point. I'd heard about it in bits and pieces. He was going to sell custom merchandise. Then it pivoted to outdoor gear. Then to something with supplements. The details always shifted. What didn't shift was the enthusiasm. He called it his brand. He had a logo made. He had a guy who built him a website. He had a whole vision, and it was genuinely exciting to hear him talk about it because he was electric when he believed in something. The problem was the money. He'd taken out 2 personal loans to fund it. He'd maxed out 1 credit card and was close on a second. He'd borrowed from 2 friends, neither of whom had seen a repayment. And now, apparently, the business was stalling. Orders weren't coming in. The supplier raised prices. The website wasn't getting traffic. He needed capital to stay afloat. And he was running out of places to look. I knew some of this. What I didn't know was that my parents had already decided what to do about it. I was home for a long weekend in October, my dad's birthday. We'd had dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and birthday cake from the grocery store. My brother had driven in from across town and we'd all been in a good mood, laughing about old vacation memories. The kind of evening that makes you feel like maybe everything is fine after all. I'd gone to bed early. I'm an early riser by nature. So I went up around 10, read for a bit, fell asleep. Sometime after midnight, I got up to get water. Our house has this layout where you have to pass the living room to get to the kitchen, and the living room light was still on. I thought maybe someone had just left it burning. But then I heard my father's voice, low and serious in a way he only gets when money is involved. I stopped at the edge of the hallway. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I just stopped. My brother was still there. They were sitting at the dining table, which my parents only used for important conversations. And my father was laying out a plan. The plan was this. My brother needed approximately $40,000 to restructure his inventory, settle one of the loans, and give the business a real shot at survival. My parents didn't have that kind of liquid cash, but I did, or close enough. And more importantly, I had credit. Good credit. The kind of credit score that would qualify for a low-interest personal loan without blinking. She'll do it, my father said. She's always been the sensible one. Once we explain it to her, she'll understand. And if she asks for repayment terms, my brother asked. He didn't sound entirely comfortable, to his credit. He sounded a little unsure. She won't, my mother said. She'd been quiet and I hadn't even clocked that she was at the table too. She never makes things difficult. She never makes things difficult. She never makes things difficult. I stood in that hallway for another 30 seconds. Long enough to hear my father say they'd talk to me in the morning, make it sound like a family decision, frame it as an investment in the family's future. Long enough to hear my mother say that I had good income and wouldn't even feel $40,000 the way they would. Wouldn't even feel it. Then I went to the kitchen, got my water, went back upstairs, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking. I was just cold. The specific kind of cold that comes from clarity, not temperature. Because in those 30 seconds in the hallway, I had understood something I had been half knowing my whole life. I wasn't a daughter to them the way my brother was a son. I was a function, a reliable mechanism, something that processed difficulty so that the people they actually worried about didn't have to. I opened my laptop. I wasn't reckless about it. I want to be clear about that, because some people hear this part and think I acted out of anger or impulse. I didn't. I was methodical. I was calm in the way you get calm when something has finally become simple. The first thing I did was log into my primary checking account and transfer the bulk of my balance. About $22,000 to a high-yield savings account that was in my name only, at a completely separate bank. I'd had that account for 2 years and never mentioned it to my family. It had been my emergency fund, my private cushion. Now it became my wall. The second thing I did was log into the shared family account. Let me explain that. About 4 years prior, my parents had asked me to be added to a joint account, ostensibly so I could help cover emergencies, which I had done twice. Once when my mother had a medical bill that slipped through insurance, once when a pipe burst and they needed cash fast before the insurance check came. Both times I'd moved money in without being asked twice, and both times I'd told myself this was just what family did. That account had my name on it. I was a full account holder. I transferred my portion of the deposit I'd made 6 months earlier, a transfer I'd made voluntarily when my dad mentioned the furnace was struggling, back to my personal account. I wasn't taking anything that wasn't mine. I ran the numbers 3 times to make sure. Then I froze my credit. This is the part that took the most deliberate thought. I called up all 3 bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and placed security freezes on my reports. This meant that even if someone had my social security number and my date of birth, they could not open a line of credit in my name without my explicitly lifting that freeze. It took maybe 40 minutes total. By 2 a.m., my credit was locked. I also changed the password on my primary bank app, enabled two-factor authentication with a new phone number, and updated the security questions. Not because I thought my family would actually try to log in, but because I wanted every door closed. I wanted there to be no version of the morning conversation where they could tell me it was already done. When I finally lay back down, it was almost 3. I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not sad, not triumphant. Just steady, like I had finally stopped leaning into a wind that had been pushing against me for 30 years and taken a step sideways. In the morning, I came down before anyone else was up and made coffee. I sat at the table with my mug and I waited. My mother came down first. She made small talk, asked if I'd slept well, commented on the weather. She was doing that thing she does when she's building up to something, layering pleasantries like insulation. I answered her questions. I didn't give her anything extra to work with. My father came down about 20 minutes later. My brother arrived around 9, which was early for him. We all ate breakfast together. It was almost surreal, how normal it felt, how much they didn't know that everything had already shifted. After the dishes were cleared, my father said he wanted to talk about something. He sat down at the head of the table, the same chair from the night before. My brother sat across from me. My mother stood at the counter, which was her version of taking a neutral position. My father laid it out. He was careful and measured. I'll give him that. He framed it as a family opportunity. He used the word investment 3 times. He talked about how proud he was of what I'd built, my career, my stability, and how that stability meant I was in a position to really help in a meaningful way. He mentioned the $40,000 as if it were a figure that had arrived organically, not one he'd calculated the night before at the dining room table while I was standing 12 feet away. He said, "We know this is a big ask, but you've never been the kind of person who turns your back on family." There it is, the line, the one they always have ready. I looked at my brother. He met my eyes for a second and then looked at the table. I took a sip of my coffee. Then I said, "I think you should know that last night around midnight I was up getting water. I heard the conversation you had at this table. Nobody moved. I heard all of it," I said, "including the part where you said I wouldn't even feel $40,000 and the part where Mom said I never make things difficult." My father started to say something. I raised my hand slightly, not aggressive, just enough to indicate I wasn't done. "I'm not going to take out a loan," I said. "My credit is frozen as of last night. My accounts are separated. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. You can check. Everything I moved was mine to begin with. But I want you to understand why I did it before the conversation happened and not after. Because after, I knew what the pressure would feel like. My mother said my name, just my name, in that particular tone that was supposed to make me feel like I was being unreasonable. "I love you," I said, "all of you. But I am not a backup plan. I am not a financial product. I am not available for withdrawal when someone else's choices run out of runway." I looked at my brother when I said that last part. Not unkindly, just directly. "I hope the business finds a way. I genuinely do, but it won't be through me, not like this." I pushed my chair back and stood up. "I'm going to finish my visit," I said. "I'd like it if we could enjoy the rest of the weekend. But if we can't do that, I'll drive home today, and that's okay too." Then I went upstairs and made my bed with very precise hospital corners, because I needed something to do with my hands. The rest of the weekend was quiet. Not hostile exactly, but the air had changed. My mother was subdued. My father was overly polite in the way people get when they're embarrassed. My brother and I actually talked for a while on Saturday afternoon. He came and knocked on my bedroom door, which surprised me, and we sat on the bed and he told me he hadn't been fully comfortable with the plan, that he felt guilty, that he knew it wasn't fair. I appreciated that more than I let on. I told him I wasn't angry at him. I told him I thought he should find a different path for the business, a real one that didn't put someone else underwater if it failed. He nodded. He said he was sorry. I think he meant it. I drove home Sunday afternoon. I cried a little on the interstate, not because I regretted what I'd done, but because of the particular grief that comes with finally seeing something clearly that you'd spent years blurring on purpose. Choosing not to know is its own kind of protection. Once you stop, there's a mourning period for the version of your family you believed in. That was 8 months ago. Here's what happened after. My brother's business did not survive. He closed it about 4 months later, took a loss, and got a salaried job at a logistics company. He seems okay. We text sometimes. It's careful and cordial, but it's there. My parents and I have had 2 real conversations since October, not the pleasantry kind. Actual conversations where my mother said she thought I'd been cold about it, and I said that I'd heard them plan to use me without my knowledge or consent, and that I needed them to understand how that felt. The second conversation went better than the first. My father admitted in his way that they hadn't thought through how it would land. He didn't quite apologize, but he acknowledged it, which from him is something. I'm not sure what we're building, the 3 of us toward. Maybe a new version of the relationship. Maybe just a polite distance. I'm holding both possibilities and trying not to force either one. What I know for certain is this. I am not the same person who stood in that hallway frozen with a bowl of soggy cereal. That person needed everyone to be okay with her in order to be okay herself. She would have said yes. She would have taken out the loan, rationalized it, resented it quietly, and kept showing up for Sunday calls and holiday dinners and birthday cakes from the grocery store, slowly hollowing out until there was nothing left to draw from. That person still lived in my body until about 2 a.m. on a Thursday night in October, and then she didn't anymore. I want to ask you something before I go. Have you ever been the one in your family who handles it? The one who never makes things difficult? The backup plan? The reliable one? The person everyone assumed would just absorb whatever they needed absorbed? Because I think a lot of you have. I think that's why you're here, watching this, at whatever hour it is, wherever you are. I think some of you are in the middle of it right now, sitting with something that doesn't feel right but hasn't yet become clear enough to act on. Here's what I want to say to you. You are allowed to take up space that isn't made up entirely of what you can do for other people. Protecting yourself is not betrayal. Saying, this is mine and you may not have it without asking me first, is not coldness. It's the most basic kind of self-respect, and nobody is going to hand it to you. You have to go get it yourself. That might mean a hard conversation. It might mean a quiet night with a laptop and 3 phone calls to credit bureaus. It might mean sitting across a breakfast table from people who love you in an incomplete way and saying the thing you've been not saying for years. It won't feel as good as you hope, and it won't feel as bad as you fear. What it will feel like is real. And after a long time of not feeling real, real is enough. If any part of this story touched something in you, drop it in the comments. I mean it. Your experience, your moment, even just the city you're watching from. You don't have to have it figured out. You just have to know you're not the only one. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. I've thought a lot about that hallway. The way I just stood there, cereal going cold, listening to my father explain to my brother how they were going to handle the situation. And by handle the situation, I mean handle me. What strikes me now, 8 months out, isn't the anger. The anger came and went pretty fast, actually. What stayed was something quieter and more complicated, a kind of reckoning with the fact that I had made it so easy for them. Not intentionally. Not because I was weak, but because I had spent so many years confusing reliability with love and proving my worth through what I absorbed, that I had accidentally trained everyone around me to see me as a resource rather than a person. That's the thing nobody tells you about being the responsible one. You think you're building trust. You think every time you handle something without complaint, you're depositing into some account that will matter eventually. What you're actually doing, if you're not careful, is teaching people the ceiling of what they can expect from you, and they will keep testing it until they find it. My father is not a villain. I want to say that clearly. He's a man who loves his children in an uneven way, and who, when faced with a problem, looked around for the easiest solution and landed on me, because I had never once made it difficult to land there. That's not cruelty. That's just the result of a pattern I participated in building, even if I didn't know that's what I was doing. What I did that night, the transfers, the credit freeze, the 2-factor authentication at 2 a.m., wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger. It was just the first time in my life I drew a line before someone crossed it instead of after. And the difference between those two things is enormous. After, you're reacting, you're hurt, you're defensive, you're already in the middle of something you didn't choose. Before you're just clear. You know what's yours, you know what it took to build it, and you decide, quietly, that it isn't available for someone else's emergency without your consent. That clarity cost me something. My relationship with my parents is different now. Not broken, but recalibrated. There's a new distance that didn't exist before, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't ache sometimes. But I think that ache is honest in a way that the old ease wasn't. The old ease was built on me not being fully seen, and I had mistaken that invisibility for harmony. Integrity, real integrity, not the performative kind, means being the same person in private that you are in public. It means your actions match what you actually believe, even when no one is watching, even when the easier thing would be to say yes and quietly resent it later. I made my decision alone at a desk in the dark, and I would make it the same way again. If there's anything I want to leave you with, it's this. The moment you stop being afraid of disappointing people who were already taking you for granted is not the end of something. It's the beginning of something much harder to build and much more worth having.